God bless Blueberry Tuesday.
Oh, amen.
What has happened, Courtney? Would you please?
I would please tell you that you are sipping on another blueberry coffee from Casey's General Store.
Thank you very much.
Yes, and I am about to try blueberry hot chocolate from Casey's General Store.
There's that.
And we also have 2 whole trays of fresh blueberry streusel muffins, which are fantastic. And those are not from Casey's General Store. Those are homemade by my very own cousin, Emily Golford, who's here in the studio. And she brought all of these things for us today.
Oh, you're the best. Welcome.
Yes.
Thank you.
And I mean, we're just getting to know you. At least I am. But I'm just going to go ahead and say this. Come anytime.
Amen to that.
So you two just went on the mission trip together to Albania.
Yes.
Yes, we did. And I thought that it would be fun to have her come in today and tell some stories along with me or whatever. And because I know we've had some listeners that have asked for more stories. I've had some that have emailed in, and I always enjoy hearing stories from a mission trip or just any time that somebody has shared the gospel and has a testimony of any kind. Is always powerful.
I'm going to be listening closely to this, and maybe our friends listening will as well, to find out. I mean, if that's a goal in your life, to be more open with your faith and share that with the people, whether it's in your own neighborhood or whatever, maybe we'll learn together through these stories. So.
I agree. Okay, so let's just start it off with, actually, Emily, who are you?
Yeah, who are you? Other than a fabulous blueberry muffin maker.
Well, I am Courtney's cousin, and we have grown up very close together our whole lives, even though we haven't lived in the same area. But we've always been very close, just a year apart in age, and have had similar life paths and all kinds of things that have connected us. And
not to mention that our moms are twins.
Oh, yes.
Oh,
yes.
my goodness. Just imagine that.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that we enjoy doing together has been taking mission trips. So we've done several together, and this last one was amazing as well.
No exception to the rule. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So we went with Global Ventures that's based out of Oklahoma. And this was my 3rd trip with them, her 4th. She took 1 trip without me, and that was sad, but it was good for her. So that was good. Yeah. But we went to Albania. And so, Emily, what would you say is one of your favorite things from Albania that just strikes you immediately? When you think of Albania, what are you going to think of first?
The thing that really pops out to me is the way that God showed himself in such a personal way, because missions and mission work can have such a large and big connotation with it, because even in the Bible, it's called the Great Commission, to go and preach the gospel to every creature. But even in doing that, I've been reminded that when God calls us to his greatest work and to his kingdom work, that he makes sure that he gives to us and he invests in us, and things don't slip through the cracks with our lives. He's deeply concerned for our lives and the things that go on in our lives, because when we are functioning at our best capacity, when we are blessed, when we are healthy, all of these things, we are able to do his work better. And so when we were in Albania, I think one of the things that struck me was the way that God spoke to me, not only to speak to others and to share his love, but to speak to my heart and to tell me things that that I needed to hear and just receive from him as well.
I mean, what I'm hearing here is that why should I sort of like be diligent in my own life and listen to God and the things that he may have for me? Because not only can I have this fulfilled life, but in the overflow, whether it's that I go to Albania or I talk to my neighbor across the backyard fence, like he's got kingdom stuff for us to do. It's his world. He's got things going on, and he wants us to be a part of it.
That's exactly right. And it doesn't, like you said, it doesn't have to be in a foreign country. But even when we do go to a foreign country, we carry his presence, and he goes directly with us and speaks to us in every season and situation.
And it's interesting. You went to a foreign country in Albania where some people are thinking, I don't even know where Albania is. Stay tuned. There's some stories ahead with Courtney and her cousin, Emily, here on Blueberry Tuesday.
Thanks.
You know, conceivably, God can tell you to do something and you can say no.
Yeah.
I mean, that's an option.
Jonah did.
Yeah, God tells him to go to another place and he says, nope, not going. And then he tries to go somewhere else and then fish swallows him. And
Right.
You can read about
Average things.
Yeah, so like I was just talking about God, told me to do foster care and I said no. And then stuff happened and then I came around and did it. So God told Courtney and her cousin Emily, who's here with us today, to go to Albania because he had work for them to do for over a week over there. And Courtney was gone, Emily was with. And so they're kind of telling some of those stories this morning.
Yeah. So, Emily, would you tell us the story about the man in the park?
Yeah, so we were sharing the gospel, going around in a park one day, and we ended up talking, the translator and I, with this one older gentleman who was just sitting in the park enjoying his day. And we were kind of approaching him with the concept of how, as a world, we've experienced a lot of hopelessness in the last year and a half, especially due to the pandemic and the ways that has affected so many parts of our lives.
I mean, there's an immediate relationship thing,
Yeah.
same here as there, right?
Right.
Yes. And it just made me think of how, what the enemy meant for evil, God has turned for good.
Yeah.
And he will use even those dark places to bring his love in and to have those open door opportunities. So that was really neat to be able to have that opportunity. And when we asked him if he had experienced any of that hopelessness, he identified and said, yes, I have. And so we were telling him that we had come to bring him a message of hope, and we believed that the greatest hope was found in Jesus. And then we asked him if he knew who Jesus was, and he told us yes, but he was a Muslim.
Okay.
So he felt like, yes, of course I know who Jesus is. And so I just gave him a very succinct version of the gospel, simplified. And really, the gospel is simple.
Yeah.
So sometimes we make it more complicated than it actually is.
Yeah.
Sure.
But shared a very simple version with him. And then I asked him if he believed what I had shared with him. And he said, well, how could I not? So
Wow.
we were able to pray with him to receive salvation. And afterwards, I was asking the translator if she could ask this gentleman how he felt on the inside. And he said that he had so much joy. And so when we see that hopelessness is a universal thing, I think it's important to also see that joy and
Yeah.
hope are
Yep.
universal as well when we share the true meaning of that through Jesus.
It just goes right along with what we're always sharing here on WBGL, hope in Jesus. And that's all we need.
Keep listening if you can. Hello, I'm sitting in a room, and you're sitting wherever you're sitting or standing or doing whatever you're doing, but I happen to be in the room with two ladies whose moms are twins.
Yes.
Can you imagine
Can
how
you?
much on the same page they are and what I'm witnessing right now? One of them is my partner here, Courtney, and then the other is her cousin, Emily, and
Yes.
they're kind of talking, among other things, talking about the mission trip you guys just went on to Albania, which, by the
Yes.
way, for those that can't think of it, where is Albania? How long does it take to get there?
Oh, it borders Greece and it's kind of across the way from Italy. And it took 1 trillion years to get there.
Your whole lives, as a matter of fact.
No, the longest flight was like 8 hours, but the total trip was felt like close to 24. You know,
You live to tell about it.
Yeah.
Minutes ago, Emily, you just shared that about the experience you had. Guy sitting in the park through a translator. You shared what you said, the simple version of the gospel, because you said, the gospel, the good news about Jesus, is pretty simple.
Yeah.
What would you have said to him in that example, something like that?
Yeah, I think that in order to really capture what the gospel is, it's important to remember a couple of things. One, we were lost from the beginning. We were lost from the Garden of Eden. And from that point, we were in desperate need of a savior who was Jesus. And then, as so many people know, John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his only son, that whoever believes in him would not perish but have everlasting life. That is the message of the gospel. God's love, his concern for our lives and his desire to be with us forever. That is the gospel wrapped up. And so expressing that when talking to someone and helping them to understand this isn't about rules. This isn't about do's and don'ts. This is about a God that is madly in love with you and just desires relationship with you. And he doesn't want it to be temporary. He wants it for eternity.
Yeah.
And if you're hearing that, I mean, just for yourself, as you're going about doing whatever you're doing this morning, and you want more of that, you can text the word Jesus to 866-917-9245. There'll be something to read there for you, and we'd love to have a conversation with you. This question could be for either of you. So maybe some people are hearing that and thinking, okay, I know that for myself. I feel that for myself, the beauty, the love, the invitation, the bigness of the gospel and Jesus. But how do you guys just walk up to strangers and share that? Whether it's in your own language or some other language.
Yeah, I feel like this is a common question among Christians because it can just feel very overwhelming to approach someone and then share the gospel. I think a lot of times our own minds and our own reputations get in the way of that more than anything else because as we were talking earlier, the gospel really is simple. It's not a complicated thing to share. So why does it overwhelm us? And I think the answer to that is that we do just look at ourselves so much and think, what's this person going to think? How's this going to affect this relationship? And not to make it, too dumbed down, but if Jesus had considered his own reputation and coming to this earth and walking this earth and living the life that we lived here and then dying that death on the cross, where would we be? Right. And so I think that having a constant prayer of God, remind me of your heart for people, because if that heart for people is inside of us, it makes it that much easier to approach others. But then, I think it's also totally fine to pray and ask God to give you boldness and courage to speak to others, because I don't think a lot of us possess that on our own. I think that our natural tendency is to just, retreat and maybe somebody else will talk to them. But, God has put people in our sphere of influence. It's important that we reach them. So having that prayer of, God, help me see people the way that you see them. Give me that courage to talk to them.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to do it on my own courage anyway.
No.
I would rather ask God for the courage and then just kind of see where it goes.
That's right. Yeah.
This is WBGL. The mission of this radio station is sharing hope in Jesus. One song, one conversation, one heart at a time. You hear that song, raise a hallelujah, and it can be easy to get into the idea of, okay, so it's kind of just about, me and Jesus, and I'm worshiping, and I'm going to have a good day today, and that's important. But there comes a time when we take our faith to other people. That's kind of one of the biggest parts of ascribing to just the enjoying relationship with Jesus is that you tell other people about him. Courtney just got back from a mission trip to Albania. You brought your cousin and friend Emily.
Yes.
And
Yes,
you're
I
just
did.
sitting here sharing stories about that.
Yeah, that's right. And one of my favorite stories that she has shared, because during the week, this was the first time that we've taken a mission trip together where we weren't on the same team the whole week. So we had different stories to share. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to bring her in, because she has different stories from me. So this one that she shared really got to me, because it ties in not only sharing Jesus with somebody else, but then this person that they had shared with ended up sharing with another. And that's how it goes. It's a domino effect. And that's why Jesus told us to go out and tell people, because they're consequently going to go tell other people and the gospel spreads. So tell us that story, Emily.
Yeah, we were in a village one day and we had just completed a food distribution for members at a church there. And as we were leaving, we were doing some one-on-one evangelism, and there was a lady there who we were sharing the gospel with, and she was actually very resistant to it. And it seemed to be a very spiritual battle. Like, she wanted to be open and receptive to it, and there was just something inside of her that was preventing her from receiving the truth and the freedom of the gospel. And so the translator and I were talking with her, and she was listening intently, but still kind of fighting it. And then as we were in the middle of talking with her, an older lady had walked by, and she had a little cart with her with some grass in it. And she starts talking in Albanian, so obviously I have no idea what's going on. And honestly, I was getting a little frustrated because I thought she was just interrupting this conversation that we were having. And she just keeps going on. And so finally, the translator was able to pray with this other woman, and she prayed the prayer of salvation. And then I asked what was going on with this other lady. And he said, well, you were in her village yesterday, and you had prayed for her, and she received Jesus. And then she also was healed of some back and hip pain that she had had. So she was going on to this other lady and saying, hey, you need to believe in Jesus. Don't fight this, because yesterday my life was completely different. She grabs a handful of her grass and she goes, I cut all this today. I couldn't do any of this the other day.
She's in a cart with grass?
Yes.
Yeah.
What's she doing with the grass?
I'm assuming it had to do with her profession of sorts.
Okay.
But
And we're talking about the grass that grows in the ground.
That is correct.
Okay, that's very good news. But I mean, this idea of like the reproduction of the
Yes.
good news about Jesus, like how did we even in the year 2021 come to know about Jesus other than the fact that people decided, whether it was through print or through stories or for whatever it is, that they're going to keep sharing it. It perpetuates, and here we are.
And here we are. Yeah. And it's easy to see, like, you thought that maybe this was a distraction. And of course, you couldn't tell because they were speaking Albanian. But sometimes, we can get so caught up in, oh, I need this person to hear this right this way and just this perfectly modeled way. And then God has other plans and uses other things, so don't be afraid of maybe a perceived distraction when you're sharing with somebody, because God can use anything at any time.
That's so good. So Courtney and her cousin Emily are here talking about their experience going to Albania and sharing. But we've heard from others as well that have been on trips around the world to share Jesus. Jeff just checked in and said he went to Ecuador, Quito, Ecuador twice. And did VBSs and did some stuff where they distributed Bibles, and he just he says, I'm tracking with what you guys are talking about today.
Oh, it's so cool.
Do you ladies shout amen and whatnot?
Oh, yes.
yeah.
Do it. Let's do it. 1, 2, 3, amen. New from Maverick City Music. And Lisa is from Charleston, Illinois, and said, hello, morning show. I was so excited to talk with you this morning. I have tried the blueberry cobbler coffee from Casey's.
Okay.
She's a fan.
Okay.
She loves the new morning show host, Courtney, which who doesn't?
Oh, that's
and
so
so we on Blueberries, we say, on Tuesdays. The word's synonymous at this point. On Tuesdays, we say this, get something blueberry and join us. Perhaps go to your local Casey's General Store and get their limited time blueberry cobbler coffee. Emily, you brought that in this morning. Thank you for that. Your cousin's here.
I'd like to give a shout out to the blueberry hot chocolate too.
And how is that?
It's super good. And I just about choked on it when you said blueberries just then. But yeah.
But not only that, tell us what you brought in and we're going to share the recipe.
All right. I brought in blueberry streusel muffins today.
Okay.
New recipe. Never made it before. So this was a shot in the dark, and almost a literal dark because I was making them at 9 p.m. last night. So I was hopeful that they would turn out well. And neither of you have died yet. So I think we have a success here. Yeah. But very simple recipe. So I think that if I can tackle it, any of the listeners can tackle it.
Now, I'm just giving a visual here. So you have a nice, good-sized muffin.
Yes.
And you can see the markings all around it, all the sides. There's plenty of blueberries in those things.
Absolutely.
But then on the top, you've got this little crumble type situation.
Yes.
Honestly, that's the best part.
Which what's in the crumble, you said?
Yeah.
I know brown sugar for sure.
Yes, brown sugar, white sugar, flour, cinnamon, and butter.
That's just the topping.
Oh, man.
That's just the topping.
So the first thing, I bit into that thing and she said, I didn't even try this. It might be terrible. Not even close to terrible. And the first thing I said was, it's very sweet.
Yeah.
If you want a sweet muffin,
Yep.
make this.
Yes.
That's what I say.
Do yourself a favor.
How are we going to get the recipe to the people?
I am posting it on Facebook as we speak.
All right.
Yep.
So
it's going to be there for you.
Facebook.com/WBGL Mornings. Do yourself a favor. I feel like the morning show today is Jonathan and Courtney and Courtney. That's how I feel. See? I'm just going to be quiet, and it's tandem. But it's actually Courtney and her cousin Emily. But you're very similar people. Your moms are twins.
Yes. Yeah, so we were just destined from the start to be
Truly.
similar people. In fact, they, so I'm a year older, and so my mom was due with me November 18th, and it didn't end up happening. But a year later, her twin sister is due with Emily on November 18th.
What
so
in the
come
world?
on, I don't
Crazy.
know. It's just, weird times.
Have you been on 5 international mission trips together? Do I have that number right?
Well, it would be, but no, only 4 together
4,
because she
okay.
took one by herself.
Only 4.
Only 4.
This is so funny. I'm hearing you in stereo. So just keep talking. People say, large percentage of Americans never left the United States, and no shame. A lot of times it's very expensive.
Sure.
You got to know where you're going to go. You don't want to get lost, all that kind of stuff. But I think a lot of people probably hear you sharing these like mission type stories, and they feel it in their heart or in their gut or both, and they're thinking, how would I go about doing that? I would love to hear both of your takes on that, or why should I do that?
Yeah, go ahead, Emily.
Yeah, I think that taking a mission trip, the cliche that I always heard, and I think we still hear, is it's life-changing.
Yes.
And I remember keeping that in mind when we took our first mission trip to Thailand back in 2013. And
That was your first mission trip to Thailand?
yes,
That's
was
not
my
like
first-
starting small. I'd be like, I'm going
No.
to Canada.
And I hadn't flown before either.
yeah,
so
this was
I hope
this
I
was
like this.
huge step. And coming back, there was just truly no other way to describe it than life-changing. And I think one of the ways that I really felt like I could describe the trip to Albania was that it was heart rearranging.
Love it.
And that, because I think once your life is changed, really, once we encounter Jesus, our lives are changed forever. And there's no going back, but there are things that he can move and he can shift in us. And I think that mission trips are a great way for that to happen. You get to see different cultures, different parts of the world, and the ways that there are so many differences, but through Jesus and through the sharing of the gospel, there are so many similarities.
Yeah. And like, if maybe you'd think, well, I would get on a plane and go somewhere in another part of the world, and the only purpose of this is to share the story about Jesus or the gospel with other people. And obviously that's the most important thing, but there are other things that happen on a trip also, right?
Yeah, and this trip in specific, we did, Emily mentioned earlier, we did a food distribution. We did a couple of those to those in need in the communities. And then we also did a water filter distribution, and we did that in Cambodia as well. It was something that they started doing as Global Ventures several years ago. And I've really enjoyed those distributions because not only because we're handing out water filters that are going to last them for up to 10 years with proper cleaning and care, but most importantly, because we share the gospel before we give them the water filters. And so we're able to give them living water and not just clean water for now.
Both, not one or the other.
Right.
Tanya's listening this morning from the Terre Haute area, and she said that her church is involved with a sort of a sister church in Honduras, and so they have helped to fund a church that was built there, and then they also went there to be with the people and kind of open it up
I
and
love
celebrate
that.
together.
Wow.
And she's, you know what she said? It was life-changing.
Yep.
So how was y'all's Monday night sushi last night?
Oh, great.
Fantastic. So good.
Yes. Shout out to Co-Fusion here in
Yeah.
Champaign, and we'll just go from there.
That's
So you got Courtney, you got her cousin Emily, and we've been talking about sharing Jesus, but and not just going in other parts of the world to do this, which you just
Right.
got back from a trip to Albania doing this. But then how does that translate into everyday life like last night?
Yeah, we were sitting outside on the patio at Co-Fusion, and we were just having a conversation, and there was two older men that were sitting across from us, and they struck up a conversation with us, they asked if we were students. And then
which in a college town, fair
and
question,
that is
I
a fair
guess.
question.
It is
You can be
fair.
a college student at any age, so it's fine.
and then asked what we did. So we shared, and then when Courtney shared what she did, he was asking questions about the station and about maybe advertising, and the fact that it's a Christian radio station opened up a doorway for some conversation about the gospel. And he had a lot of questions.
Yeah.
One of the things we commented on, and he even said himself, I am looking for the truth. I'm hungry for the truth.
Yep.
He was very well read, very intelligent, and had some excellent questions.
Yeah.
And it just lent itself to this, really easy conversation about Jesus.
Yeah. And what strikes me is we were actually, we were planning to just be there an hour. We had paid for an hour on our meter for our car. And then we had to run by the store afterwards, and Emily was going to be grabbing blueberries for these muffins and that we're eating. And so anyway, it would have been very easy. And we had a prayer meeting that ended up, we did have to cut the conversation off, but we talked to him for probably half an hour, and we had to give up the time of going to the store and figure out a different way to get blueberries. It was, if we had allowed ourselves to be rushed and hurried, and this isn't to oh yeah, look at us, but it's just a reminder that people are the most important thing.
It's true.
And if the muffins had to wait, they could have waited. But sharing the gospel is always number one.
Now, you said he's well read.
Yeah.
You're asking him questions. You're kind of telling him about this is what the faith in Jesus looks like day to day, or in your life, or in your soul. He's asking you, questions on a fairly intellectual level. Now, I experience both of you as rather intellectual type people, but still, there's some intimidation. Were you able to answer all of his questions, or did that even matter?
No, we weren't able to. And we even at one point said, hey, we are humble enough to say we don't have the answers for everything. Some of our faith strictly comes down to trusting that God is who he says he is, and believing those things that he says in the Bible are true.
Yeah.
And, just I think letting him know that this is real for us.
Yeah.
And it's real because we've encountered Jesus.
Yes.
But it doesn't mean that we know everything about everything,
Yep.
So,
There's people that know everything about everything. Super boring people.
so boring.
In my opinion. Paula is listening to WBGL, and she is ticked. And here's why. You got this beautiful conversation going on. Courtney and her cousin Emily are here talking about just having a more personal relationship with Jesus and sharing with other people. And she says, I'm trying to listen in closely, but work keeps interrupting. It's always something,
Yeah.
But she wanted to thank you guys just for sharing. By the way, several people this morning have just texted the word Jesus. You can anytime
yes.
you can text the word Jesus to 866-917-9245 and sort of, just kind of learn about the closer, more personal relationship with Jesus. Emily, what's your favorite Bible verse?
My favorite Bible verse is Isaiah chapter 49, verse 15 and 16, which says, "Can a woman forget her nursing child and have no compassion on the son of her womb? Even these may forget, but I will not forget you. Behold, I have inscribed you on the palms of my hands. Your walls are continually before me." And I love this verse because it really ties into even everything we've been talking about this morning, about how personal God is, and how much he loves people. And he loves people as his creation as a whole, but he loves us individually and intimately as well. And so even when we think that our lives are going unnoticed or that we're going unseen, we are always seen by him and never forgotten.
What do you say, Courtney, when you're hanging out with Emily and she just gives gold like that?
I say
What do you say?
that is a typical time with Emily. She just gives out gold because she is
Wow.
gold.
Well, thanks for coming in today.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for bringing the Casey's Blueberry Coffee and the muffins. I can find the recipe on our Facebook page, but thanks to both of you for just sharing this awesome stuff. So much good feedback, and I don't know what better thing we could have been talking about this morning.
I don't either.
Good Tuesday.
A unique